Hey, Sean, welcome. Tonight we are editing a live, previously live presentation that happened at a firefighters conference. And it's a perfect application of the technology available in Final Cut Pro's multicam editing. So I'm gonna share my screen. Can I share just Final Cut Pro? Yes, I can. Great, wonderful. I can add it to the stream. Awesome. But before I add it to the stream, I need to locate the library. That's an important thing to do. Do I have IDEX, FDIC 2022? I do. All right. And I'm going to come in here, add it to the stream. Hello. So this is a pretty straightforward thing. If you've got any questions at all, throw them in the comments as I do this. If you're not watching live or watching this later, feel free to throw anything in the comments as well after the fact, and I'll get to it when I get to it, which is typically pretty quickly. I am still recovering from COVID a little bit, so excuse my scratchy voice and low energy, but let's do it. So there's 3 files that are a part of this. We've got this guy who's presenting this PowerPoint about how to use like jaws of life on electric cars, because it turns out if you chomp into these things and you chomp through a high voltage electrical cable, you'll have a bad time. So this is one of those clips, as is this is the B cam. So there's this wide cam and the tight cam, so 45 and 10. And then additionally, we need to pull in the audio here. Electric vehicles. Pajoom. So we've got clip 10. Is 45 the other one? Yeah, 45, 10. And the audio, and we're going to right click on these and new multicam clip. And I always name my multicam clips with the word sync at the end. That just helps me for some reason. So I'm going to call this EV extrication tool sync. Video format 4K, that works. Rendering ProRes 422. All right, so here's where it's going to sync my angles, and I hope that it's just going to work great, but I have fears because the audio file here was taken directly out of the mixing board, and this is all room audio, so we're hearing him, so hopefully Final Cut is smart enough, but we're going to find our little sync file and open it up, and let's see how Final Cut did. Check back in over here. Hi. So looking at it, predictably the audio file is longer. I'm going to drag this to the bottom as I arrange this stuff and rename it audio. I'm going to call this unknown camera angle the wide, and I'll call this one the tight. And we'll assign audio roll dialogue, and this one, same thing. Roll dialogue. Okay. I like when they're the right colors. So it looks like it did a decent job. I'm going to check the audio here and make sure it syncs up. You can't hear the audio too well, I think, but we'll find out if you can hear this.
For the U.S., he will be presenting plug that's coming in. These could be a variety of levels of plug capability and charging capability.
That looks like it's synced up, and let's see how the tight looks.
We're going to have high voltage cabling coming off the traction battery pack. We're always going to have an electric traction motor.
So that's the room audio.
Motor in the front, you may have a singular motor in the rear, or you may have...
Great. So Final Cut synced this together for me. We're in great shape. And there's one other element that I'm not going to sync to the presentation here. It might simplify it if this was a longer presentation. But I think it's going to be easier to just leave it alone. But the entire presentation is about 20 minutes long with the intro and the outro, a little less because it technically starts here at 55 seconds, but the audio is a little longer. So we are going to come over here And we're going to make a new project. And I'm going to just put this in the panels event here and call it the EV extrication. And I like to do dash draft 1 because when you duplicate these, it usually automatically iterates to the next number. So if I duplicate this, it'll say draft 2. Okay. So all I do is come down here to extrication tool sync, and I'm going to drag this whole thing. This is my multicam clip. And I can see what my active angles are if I switch to this angle viewer, and I'm going to set it to 4 angles for the time being. And so you can see that as I do this, the active audio angle is this green audio angle, and the active video angle is the wide. So that's what the program feed is going to look like. And I can come back here to the beginning, and I'm just going to lop that off, that beginning piece. And now I'm going to make sure that up here, if you haven't used this before, these 3 buttons affect what, when you make cuts, what is going to change. So if I make cuts with this highlighted, both the audio and video will change. What I want to do is leave my audio always on this. So I'm going to change it to just video only switching. And that way, when I cut back and forth between the 2 cameras, it's always going to keep the audio the same throughout. And the last thing, so the other thing I'm going to bring in here eventually is I have a PDF of this PowerPoint, which I might put on screen for some of these slides because they're not, it's kind of tricky to see in some of these wide angles. So I might just put it over the top of it. And that's what I didn't bother syncing to the multicam, but that's what we're dealing with. So first things first, I'm going to come back here and change this to 2 angles, and I don't need to see the audio angle. I'm just going to look at those 2 right there. I'm going to maximize this. I hope that's okay for you guys there. All right. And I'm going to hide this browser because I don't need it. So now my workspace here is pretty well optimized. I can see these 2 angles, and this is my program feed here on the right. So what I'm going to do is start and just play this through. And what I have my keys set up to my multicam setting. So if I tap the 2 key, it's going to go to camera 2. If I tap the 1 key, it's going to cut back to camera 1. So I'm just going to watch this and keep tapping 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 so that my feed here goes back and forth between those. But I'm going to undo all those and do them thoughtfully now. So I'm going to cheat and just start pretty much right with the audio waveforms here that you can see. And just for fun, we're going to take this, since we only have 1 track with a multicam clip, this is only 1 track, so I'm going to make it pretty tall so we can see everything, and it's a nice big preview. And again, if you've got any questions or ideas, I'm always looking to get better at this. I use the multicam tool a lot, but if you see something like, hey, did you know you could XYZ, let me know. But this one's pretty simple and straightforward, and I don't have the audio for this running through, so you'll probably hear a little bit of it in the microphone, but probably not a ton, and that's fine with me.
Attention FDIC attendees, in just a moment, in the IDEX Fire and Safety.
The other thing that I always do with Final Cut when I'm editing these things is I play it at double speed. When you tap the L key, that starts playing.
Attention FDIC attendees,
and if you tap it again after it's playing, it plays at double speed.
Attention FDIC attendees, in just a moment, in the IDEX Fire and Safety booth 1608, we're going to host a presentation by Dalen Zartman, longtime career firefighter and the lead of Energy Security Agency. He also serves as a rescue specialist, training firefighters and rescue groups around his region of the U.S. He will be presenting on extrication challenges of electric vehicles. Let's give our attention to Mr. Dalen Zartman. Dalen. Thank you. I think I got this close enough. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and do 2 things at once with 2 hands. We'll see how this goes with the clicker and the microphone.
So I didn't ask the client, but this little intro here, I don't know if they want that at the beginning of this or not. For the time being, I'm going to keep it. just because it's going to be easy to chop off later, and rather than replace it. But since he says thank you at the beginning.
I think I got this close enough. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and do two things at once with two hands. We'll see how this goes with the clicker and the microphone.
And with this little intro that he's got, this little informal ha ha ha, that would make it would be weird to just start it there without having seen that intro and the handoff a little bit. So that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to cut to the tight camera for this little personal moment.
Thank you. I think I got this close enough. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and do two things at once with two hands. We'll see how this goes with the clicker and the microphone. We're going to try and keep this very compressed and focused, but I want to make sure that I give everybody some tangible walkaways leading this brief presentation. So you've got good tools in your toolbox regarding some education concepts as they relate to electric vehicles. To get there, I think the most important
And what I'm looking for is moments in the audio where it's a natural spot to switch cameras. And I want to switch as much as I can, just because with a presentation like this, it's that subtle switching which can really help make it less boring. It can really break things up a bit. So if I can add more cuts, I like to do that. And I really like to use the tight camera for anything that's sort of personable, or where it seems like he's got a little insert or an aside, which is maybe funny or more heartfelt or more important. I like to punch in for that effect to show that emphasis. So onward.
to get there, I think the most important foundation to start with today is to just basically understand lithium-ion batteries, how the voltage systems are oriented, designed, and what they do and don't do in vehicles, so that'll kind of build the foundation for us to understand what the trouble areas are on vehicles when we're performing extrication, and how to avoid those or properly manage them. Okay? Let's see which way I'm supposed to point this.
And I think that little see which way I'm going to point this would be a fun little spot to pop in.
Let's see which way I'm supposed to point this. All right, so to begin with.
And bless his heart, I'm going to cut that little section out where he's turning and waiting, just to speed that up a little bit.
All right, so to begin with.
I'm actually going to crop that even more just to keep it moving. All right.
Or properly manage them, okay? Let's see which way I'm supposed to point this. All right, so to begin with, there are a variety of types of electric vehicles, but there are certain components that are present in all of them. This is an all-electric vehicle, or what we call battery electric vehicle, and just gives us kind of a basic grid of where parts and pieces are. 10 years ago, when the HEV world of
Remember that 10 years ago.
when the pieces are 10 years ago, when the HEV world of education pieces are 10 years ago, when the
I want that 10 years ago.
are 10 years
Where's the 10?
are 10 years
Oh, it is right there.
pieces are 10 years ago, when the HEV world of education started, we had two big teaching points, and it was don't touch the orange cable and don't touch the high voltage battery pack. I'm sure everybody recalls those days. We're really trying to I'm sure everybody recalls those days. We're really trying to reframe that educational point and say it's not just about those two elements. This usually resonates with firefighters.
So again, when I see this little pause in the waveform, this is probably a good spot to click, to switch cameras. And sure enough, he's sort of changing and giving a little aside.
Those two elements. This usually resonates with firefighters, and this is to communicate. Think of every electric vehicle as a circuit, right, or a system. This is an electrical circuit, and every single piece of equipment that is part of that circuit.
The one thing that I get sensitive to is when the tight camera moves around. So like as he's sort of starting to sway, we're not really sure where he's going, and now the camera starts to move. And our instruction was we were streaming this live and switching cameras live as we did this. And I told Julio, as the camera operator, I said, don't try to make it a smooth transition, because we were doing the switching live. So when they started moving, what we did was switch to the wide camera, quickly pan to follow, and then switch back to the tight. And so I didn't think we would be doing this sort of an edit of this footage since it did stream live, but we are. And so I want to make sure that as that movement starts to take place, that we're not on a weird camera shot. So I'm going to use this other little moment right as that camera's starting to move a little bit to cut back to the wide, just so we don't watch that camera motion.
Those two elements. This usually resonates with firefighters, and this is to communicate. Think of every electric vehicle as a circuit, right, or a system. This is an electrical circuit, and every single piece of equipment that is part of that circuit is a point of concern, right? So as we look at this, we evaluate what's on here. We've got our high voltage traction battery pack. We're gonna have a plug that's coming in. These can be a variety of levels of plug capability and charging capabilities. We're gonna have high voltage cabling coming off the traction battery pack. We're always gonna have an electric traction motor. You may have a singular motor in the front. You may have a singular motor.
As he's talking here, I don't want to cut away because he's pointing at the slide. So I'm looking for any chance where he sort of looks away, and as he starts to talk about this, the different motors, that might be a good spot to break it up visually with the tight.
You may have a singular.
Yeah, as he's looking here.
You may have a singular motor in the front, you may have a singular motor in the rear, or you may have two motors. On the new GMC Hunter, you actually have 4 independent motors on each wheel. So there is no continuity within the world of EVs to say motors are always going to be here, motors are always going to be there.
That brings us to this other little break, and we'll go back. Looks like he's about to address the slides again.
Motors are always going to be there. As you look at all these other components here, today is not a day where we're going to explain what all these things do. DC to DC converters, thermal systems, your onboard charging system, your auxiliary battery, your transmission component, charge port. What we are going to explain is every one of these are potential hazards. So some of the common move. What we are.
Yeah, as he turns back here. So this is the whole game. This is just watching this, going through, and I'm doing it live for you because you want it. But we're just going to watch this and keep looking for these moments where we can add the dynamic camera change. And the footage is clear enough where I don't think I'm going to bother doing too much with slides because he's also doing a great job of interacting with it Vanna White style in front of it.
What we are going to explain is every one of these are potential hazards. So some of the common moves we make, fender crushes, 8-post cuts, every one of those elements require either you to look and understand, is there an electrical component connected to that? Okay, it could be any one of these features or not. So you need resources at your tips, or at your fingertips.
So he's starting to walk away, and he's leaving the camera frame a little bit, so we're going to go back to the wide.
Or not. So you need resources at your tips, or at your fingertips, or a whole lot of academic study to try and discern where these parts and pieces are. Okay. This also radically affects our ability to put the vehicles in a safe state. It is not the same across the board for every make, model, and year of vehicle. So everybody's becoming familiar with cut loops. Yes, cut.
It's all just fascinating stuff you don't think about. But when a firefighter comes to help somebody in a car accident in a Tesla, they got things to think about, and they got to be trained on this stuff.
It is not the same across the board for every make, model, and year of vehicle. So everybody's becoming familiar with cut loops. Yes, cut loops are going to do different things on different cars. In their purest explanation, they are designed to isolate high voltage energy to the traction battery pack and potentially the high voltage cable. Some of them will also interrupt.
I'm going to cut that because I'm a nice guy.
Cable. Some of them will also interrupt power for your low voltage system. So it's very important that you understand when you're going to cut a cut loop, if you're going to cut a cut loop, how it's going to impact your overall operations. Your 12 volt system is always going to control your transmission and your SRS component. Your 12 volt system is always going to control your transmission and your SRS components in many cases, right? So we'll just paint a picture for you. You've got a moderate collision. You've got a moderate collision. You need to gain access or control that vehicle, and you want to push it off the roadway. If you disconnect the 12 volt battery, you lose the ability to affect the transmission of the vehicle. Everybody tracking that? The second challenge on a lot of EVs is you have electromechanical switches, levers, and handles. If you disconnect the 12 volt battery, you lose the ability to affect the transmission of the vehicle. Everybody tracking that? The second challenge on a lot of EVs is you have electromechanical switches, levers, and handles. So just getting into the front trunk space, opening up the door handles, all of those systems on many of the EVs are linked to 12 volt power. So the days of being every time, all the time is fired, we just engage the vehicle, cut the 12 volt power. You got to think twice about that now on EVs. You understand how that's going to affect your operating sequence and whether or not it's a move that you want to make or don't want to make. So
Fascinating. I was standing there as this presentation was happening, and I don't think I was paying enough attention.
That you want to make or don't want to make. So quit thinking high voltage cable and traction battery pack and start thinking comprehensive system. Any parts of the system that are damaged or that you may potentially cause damage to with extrication tools can result in really bad things, which we're going to start to work into now. Right? Now let's talk about batteries. I like to explain this as though we're making lasagna in a casserole dish. Okay? I'm going to
All right. As he's telling the story, we're going to cut in.
I like to explain this as though we're making lasagna in a casserole dish, okay? I don't have enough time to get really, really heavy in the chemistry on this, but I want everybody to understand the base level on this. If I'm going to build
I'm going to switch to the wide for that whole section there because the tight was a little shaky as he was finding his spot.
And the base level on this. If I'm going to build a lithium-ion battery, I'm going to take a layer of noodles, for lack of a better term, okay? And we're going to call that first layer of noodles an anode. There's two terms we're going to use, an anode and a cathode. Anodes and cathodes just represent basically a positive filament and a negative filament. Meaning one of them has certain chemistries, designs, and coatings that's designed to discharge lithium ions. The other one has components that are designed to charge lithium ions, okay? Okay? So I lay in this layer of noodles, and let's say it's an anode. My next layer would preferably be the cathode, which is the other side of that equation, so I can move these lithium ions back and forth. The problem with this is when I place that other layer of noodles down, those two layers don't like each other. Okay? Anytime they come into contact, they're going to short circuit. All right? Here's the other problem. To help facilitate the movement of those lithium ion particles, what do I put between lasagna noodles? Sauce, right? I put some sauce in there. Well, the sauce in lithium-ion batteries is an electrolyte gel, paste, or liquid that has organic solvents in it. All of you as firemen, as soon as I say organic solvents, you're going to recognize, oh, that means flammability, right? So now I place a paste, liquid, or gel in between these two layers that don't like each other, and if I create a
Cut to the tight for this part.
all of you as firemen, as soon as I say organic solvents, you're going to recognize, oh, that means flammability, right? So now I place a paste, liquid, or gel in between these two layers that don't like each other, and if I create a short circuit by those two layers contacting each other, that flammable solvent is going to heat up, build pressure, and then eventually rupture the battery and off gas, okay? So I slip one more magical element of noodles in between the anode and the cathode. It's called a separator. A separator is polyethylene or polypropylene. Think of it as just a thin piece of mesh, for lack of a better term, and that material lets the lithium ions move back and forth, but it protects the anode and the cathode from ever contacting each other. So that's kind of the best fireman terms way I know how to explain the chemistry behind lithium-ion batteries. All right? Now, let's talk about how they get conformed. If you look at this in detail, you see it's everything we just talked about, right? We have anodes, we have cathodes, we have separators, we have gel in between all those layers. If I want to make a cylindrical battery, then I take that layer of noodles and I roll them up. Once I roll them up, I place them inside of an enclosure, and that's my cylindrical battery. Prismatic batteries, predominantly found on much of your European imports, your BMWs, your Mercedes. Same concept, but I'm going to fold up those layers of noodles, and I'm going to slide them into a rigid metallic case, okay? And then I can also have pouch cell batteries. Pouch cell batteries are like metallic envelopes where I'm slipping all those same layers of material into the equation. The last one is button cells. Everybody's probably familiar with button cells because they think of watches and small appliances. But there are, what I want everybody to understand about this slide is you may interact with every single one of these on one vehicle, okay? So what you need to understand is you may have cylindrical cells in your traction battery pack or the battery pack that's built into the floor pan of the vehicle.
I'm going to try to cut back here to him for a minute. See how long I can hold this shot.
Okay? So what you need to understand is you may have cylindrical cells in your traction battery pack or the
Come on, computer. You can do it. I'm rooting for you. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Final Cut. Everyone's watching. Everyone's watching, and you stopped responding. We're going to force quit and come back. And the nice thing about Final Cut is... I'll wait for the error dialog here. Because there's no save, I don't know how Premiere works, but you never click save. It just saves everything you do constantly. Anytime you do something, it saves. And so I should be right back to where I was with that last cut, and I can just pick up where I left off. Update later. Let me share my screen again. Let's share screen, window, Final Cut Pro. Add this to the stream. Here we go, and we are back. Okay, so we're in panels, extrication tool. Oh, that's the sync. I don't want to do that. I want draft one, and good.
On one vehicle, okay? So what you need to understand is you may have cylindrical cells in your traction battery pack, or the battery pack is built in the floor pan of the vehicle. Your low voltage battery on the newer EVs are no longer lead acids. They are moving towards lithium-ion low voltage batteries that are not recognizable as standard lead acid batteries, and many of those have prismatic lithium-ion batteries in them. Recent event happened out in California. Recent event.
Cut back.
Recent event happened out in California. Had a recycling center fully removed the traction battery pack from a vehicle, did all their protocol checks, took that vehicle, put it into a crusher, removed it from the crusher, placed it on the sled with all the other crushed cubes. It caught on fire because of a lithium-ion-based fire. Caught all the adjacent things on fire. Ended up burning 30 acres of wildland property. And the source of that fire was the low-volt lithium-ion battery. All right, all that. So even the little guy can get. The button cells are located in key fobs. Okay, so your key fobs can create problems. The button cells are located in key fobs. Okay, so your key fobs can create problems for you. So be prepared to engage every single one of these. Now, this is the part that can get confused. To engage every single one of these. Now, this is the part that can get confusing for everybody with terms. So I'm going to use ESA terms to help everybody understand how these things get put together. Everything we just looked at is what we call a cell. Okay, so it's a singular cell. When we build car batteries, we take cells and we place cells into what I call cell packs. So if you look at this slide, the small black component here with the silver tabs on it, that would be an anode and a cathode silver tab. What we do is we take that box, it may be about the size of a VHS tape, and we literally cram as many of those cells into that box as we can. Those could be prismatic.
Cut to the tight.
Those could be prismatics, those could be pouches, or those could be cylindricals. Then we want to run wire leads off of those anodes and cathodes, and that gives us our positive and our negative tabs. Then I'm going to cram as many cell packs into this box as possible, and this is called a module pack. Then I'm going to take module packs, and I'm going to throw them into what's called a battery pack.
Looks like he's about to talk to us.
And you end up with what's in a modern-day electric vehicle, okay? Now, let's talk about the real-world challenges as extrication people now that we understand these batteries. There are three things that lithium-ion batteries don't like. They don't like thermal abuse, they don't like mechanical or physical abuse, and they don't like electrical abuse, all right? So let's just talk about wheel rotation. When the vehicle is off and you move the vehicle and the wheels are rotating, that is spinning the electric motor in the opposite direction, which means it is backfeeding voltage into the high voltage battery pack. Okay? Just by show of hands, did everybody think that's going to be a problem? Yes. Okay? So when we categorize, batteries don't like electrical abuse. When electricity comes into the traction battery pack in a speed or a volume that battery pack doesn't like, that creates heat. Heat generates a boiling process within the electrolyte gel, which builds up pressure, which creates off-gassing, which then results in what we call thermal runaway and propagation. Let's talk about mechanical or physical damage. That's your collision.
Cut back to the wide.
That's your collisions, right? Or any penetrations to the case, any tweakings of the battery closures. Also, physical contact and damage to the components. When we're looking at this as a circuit, understand there's safety systems in here that are designed to open that circuit in times of collision. But when you damage elements of a vehicle in a high-speed collision, a lot of those safety features don't work. So you may expect the vehicle to be isolated or automated in a shutdown procedure, and it's not, all right? So always assume the vehicles are energized when you are engaging them as extrication personnel. What about submersion? Submersion is a spin-off that ends up creating electrical damage, but it's more of an environmental equation. Anybody worried about getting electrocuted by an electric vehicle in a pond? You shouldn't be, okay? Don't worry about that one, right? This is direct current, not alternating current. We're talking about...
Interesting. See, we're all learning stuff while we're making this. We're learning that if your Tesla falls in a lake, you're not going to electrocute anybody. Good to know.
Electric vehicle in a pond. You shouldn't be, okay? Don't worry about that one, right? This is direct current, not alternating current. We're talking about two totally different applications. We can't dig into that real deep today, but the only time you have a really high energy hazard related to EVs is when you're directly interacting with the high voltage battery pack or the high voltage cable itself or the superconductors that may be connected to generators.
Cut back to the wider. So yeah, I'm just looking to break this up any chance I can. But as he's saying these more impactful asides, that's when I'm trying to cut to that tight to really give it the most impact it can, rather than this far away where we're more exposed for the screen than we are for him.
The best way for me to explain generators, to help you guys understand all these confusing terms, is on the wheels. Many of the vehicles will have what we, just for lack of a better term, what we'll call a generator that is designed to pull energy from heat or active braking, and then it converts that energy into something that's usable for the battery, okay? Those will all have high voltage ranges on them, okay?
I'm going to cut to the tight for some of that.
Many of the vehicles will have what we just for lack of a better term, what we'll call a generator that is designed to pull energy from heat or active braking, and then
Okay.
when we're doing shutdown procedures, the extrication special. It starts with ignition interactions and power buttons, and then if necessary, your next step should typically be a 12 volt. If you want to try not to cut cables, you want to try and remove cables. So if you need to re-engage 12 volt power to gain control over the transmission, you have that availability. Some manufacturers recommend manual disconnects on the high voltage battery packs. We categorically, at the energy.
This looks like it's about to be important.
We categorically, at the Energy Security Agency and in the OEM guidelines, will tell you be very leery of doing that without proper PPE and proper training, okay? That is one interaction directly with the battery pack where you can have an arc flash injury or get electrocuted if you use your open hand, unprotected, and touch the vehicle, and the vehicle has become grounded, okay? You want to make sure that you are not engaging with high voltage battery packs without very special guidance. All right, I'm going to give you 3 takeaway key moves. All right, I'm going to give you 3 takeaway key moves on the extrication side. A-pillars, all right? We've skinned out the fender. We've busted the hinges on the front door. We're getting ready to do a dash displacement. Be very conscious.
Again, I can tell now, I've sort of got a feel for how he's presenting, where he sort of puts some information out there and then he's got a but, he's got a warning. And that's where I want to come in tight, because that's where he's got this sincere look on his face. And when we were switching this live, we're sort of doing our best, and it's tricky to do. And so it is nice to be able to come back and do this other pass in editing and make a different version of it. So I get it. Here we go.
Or we're getting ready to do a dash displacement. Be very conscientious about making just a blind cut on that A-pillar. In some of the EVs, they're actually channeling the high voltage cable through the rocker chamber and through the A-pillar chamber. That means even if I pull out the fender and take the punch skirt out right where I'm typically hoping to see the high voltage cable, see, I see it right there, I'll avoid it with a cut. If you just dig into an A-post and you'll not identify where that high voltage cable is, there's a high possibility you may cut one. There's always stranded energy.
So you can see he's stepping out of camera here just in time as he's switching up his cadence here. So we're going to cut back to the wide.
There's always stranded energy on the high voltage battery pack and on the high voltage cable, no matter what shutdown processes you do. So if you cut that, you are probably going to interact with 400 volts minimum. Everybody follow that? That's not going to be a desirable outcome. Other areas that you want to watch, the fender crush move, right? To gain access to the gap on the front hinge. If you go up and just blindly attack that wheel well with your spreader and go to crush down that fender wall, there is a good possibility that you've got an inductor-conductor above that strut tower that's going to have supercapacitors in it with 400 volts of energy on them. You crush that with your tool, you're going to have big problems. Again, right? And understand those aren't just energy problems. They may create short circuits within the system that are going to create short circuits within the high voltage battery pack. Okay? Watch your floor pan movements. All the newer vehicles, the traction battery packs pretty much encompass the entire floor pan, right? So if I do any of my traditional load movements with rams or spreaders on the rockers or the floor pans, if you tweak the floor pan or the rocker panel and you apply pressure, there is a good probability you're going to be applying mechanical damage to your batteries, all right?
Some of this I'm going to go in for the tight just because it's important.
So if I do any of my traditional load movements.
So the other thing as I'm doing this, I'm not just watching and switching to the tight and letting it play. I'm sort of keeping an eye, like I'll leave it on the wide, but I'm keeping an eye over here on the left of the tight and the wide. And I'm just watching the tight. And if I see after a while that he's been in frame, he's been in focus, he's not looking away, rather than have to cut to that and undo it if things go strange, I'll sort of mentally mark a spot of like, okay, we could have been tight this whole time. And I'll make the edit, even though we're on the tight here, or on the wide here, I'll come over here and I'll make another cut for the wide. And then I can easily come back in here, find a good spot in the audio, and make my cut to the tight. And now I know that this was usable because that's what I was watching, and I've switched back to a safe angle here. I'm going to undo that because I wasn't actually doing it till right now for this section, but we're flowing. And with a 21-minute video, we are at 16 minutes, so we are in good shape, and we're almost done here with the first pass.
So what can you expect if you mess up and do any of those things? A lot of stuff, okay? If you penetrate the floor pan, it causes direct penetration to a lithium-ion battery. Typically, in about 15 seconds, you're going to get a high-pressurized gas stream that's going to blow out of that enclosure. When it ignites, because it typically has enough ignition source, you're going to have about 4,000 degree Fahrenheit blowtorch. It's going to continue to blow until it consumes the fuel within that cell, or has expanded to the neighboring cells, and then starts resulting in widespread thermal runaway and propagation. So direct damage is bad, okay?
So yeah, that whole section, he was in frame, in the tight. So I'm going to come back through here and look for a good spot to let him just sing this section.
Out of that enclosure. When it ignites, because it typically has enough ignition source, you're going to have about 4,000 degree Fahrenheit blowtorch. It's going to continue.
Yeah, so I'm doing this by, again, looking at the waveforms. I can see that there's a pause here, which means that he's probably taking a breath and getting ready to say something more impactful. And so those are the areas I'm choosing to cut. So I'm not like actually going in here, hanging on every word, and then going back through the waveforms and trying to find exactly where what was said. I'm using the waveforms to sort of understand his cadence so that I can make these edits a little faster. So again, I'm going to watch this part and look for another safe spot. You can see here in the tight, he's sort of off screen, so I know I'm not going to want this part of that. So I'm going to leave it on the wide, but I'm going to notice as I play this, when is he good? Now he's in the middle at this little break in the waveform. And as I watch this, I'm going to keep an eye on that until he sort of steps out of the way and it gets awkward, and then I know I'm going to cut back to it. But I can tell now that I might be able to cut to it in this gap and cut back to the wide here. And in fact, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to be aggressive and see how this worked out, and we'll watch it together.
Okay? Second thing you can expect is a slow and delayed response. If you don't directly, really dramatically damage the batteries, and instead it's a subversion issue, or you've damaged another component that's causing a secondary internal short circuit, it may be hours, it may be days, or it may be weeks after you've done that event, and you will start developing off-gassing at a much slower release rate that then will...
I'm going to...
and instead it's a submersion issue, or you've damaged another component that's causing a secondary internal short circuit.
This is where I'm going to make the cut as he starts talking about the build-up.
Short circuit, it may be hours, it may be days, or it may be weeks after you've done that event, and you will start developing off-gassing at a much slower release rate that then will eventually catch on fire. Last takeaway for you guys, and then I'm going to open it up to a couple of questions, and then we're going to close this out. When you are initially off-gassing, and everybody please get this, when you're...
I'm going to make that little aside, the wide part.
Last takeaway for you guys.
And I'll switch back to the tight for this piece.
Last takeaway for you guys. I'm going to open up to a couple of questions and we're going to close this out. When you are initially off-gassing, and everybody please get this, when you're initially off-gassing and the battery system has not created an ignition point and it's not on fire, that is the most hazardous time you can interact with an electric vehicle. So if as first responders you show up, it may look like airbag dust, residual dust from airbag deployment. Assume that that is electric vehicle potential thermal runaway. Your big indicator is cherry bubble gum. Everybody say cherry bubble gum. That's an odorant smell connected to the solvent within the electrolyte lithium-ion batteries. Tesla coined that term. I just say it's an electrical odor that's really, really sweet, okay? You'll always know it once you smell it. If you smell that odor, assume the battery packs are going into... You'll always know it once you smell it. If you smell that odor, assume the battery packs are going into thermal runaway, walk away, right? Get your lines out on the ground and understand you're going to go in a different direction here, okay? Let's do some... Hi.
All right, so now we're going into Q&A, so we're going to cut back to the wide. I don't think there's any footage of the people who are going to ask these questions, but we're going to go with it. And I might cut out this weird little hesitation.
Here, okay? Let's do some...
Yeah. Whoops. Lop this off. Make him feel more natural.
Different direction here, okay? Let's do some... Hi, Keith. How are you, buddy? Let's do some quick questions because I blew a bunch of information at you guys really, really quick.
I'm going to cut out that little hi to Keith, too.
Here, okay? Let's do some quick questions.
Yeah, that's more natural.
A bunch of information at you guys really, really quickly. Anybody have any open questions that they'd like to ask in front of the group? If not, I'm going to step aside here once we're done. I'll be available over here, and I'll stay until nobody has any remaining questions. Any other inputs? Yes, sir.
Great.
Cable and the jaws are still on.
Interesting. So now we've got this spot where no one's on camera. We're just hearing the audio of a question. And I don't love it. And I don't know what we're going to do yet. But we're going to solve it.
Now,
Hang
I'm going
on.
to step aside here once we're done. I'll be available over here, and I'll stay until nobody has any remaining questions. Any other inputs? Yes, sir.
All right. So again, I'm putting sort of that safety switch back to the wide, and I'm going to come in on him tight.
Anybody have any open questions that they'd like to ask in front of the group? If not, I'm going to step aside here once we're done. I'll be available over here, and I'll stay until nobody has any remaining questions. Any other inputs? Yes, sir.
And I'm going to cut out that any other inputs.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, what am I going to do here? So can we even hear the question?
The cable and the jaws are still on the cable. What's going to happen to the tool and the operator? So the question was, if they cut the cable, meaning the high voltage cable, and it's the cut is conduct.
Okay. I'm going to film him going off here. I'm going to put in a cut. And then I'm just going to come back when he's repeating the question. Let's see here.
Questions? Yes, sir. So the question was, if they cut the cable, meaning the high voltage cable, and it's the cut is conducted with a hydraulic tool or an hydraulic tool, that's your question, what's going to happen? You're probably going to create a massive arc, right? So this is just like using a metal component to interface with an energized metal component. You're going to have a radical electrified response that then is going to kick in a bunch of, hopefully, safety relays and fuses within the system. But the likelihood of arc...
I'm going to see if now it looks like my tight's coming in.
But the likelihood of arc flash and energy transmission is very high. Yeah, that could be a lethal choice.
Cut back to the wide.
Any other questions? Okay, guys, follow up with us. Check out our website, energysecurityagency.com, for more resources, all the ERGs and QRs.
All right, I'm going to cut out that any other questions and just come back to here like this.
That could be a lethal choice. Okay, guys, follow up with us. Check out our website, energysecurityagency.com, for more resources. All the ERGs and QRGs are on there for you. Rescue Specialists. We're collaborative with NFPA on hosting that library. Make sure you know what you're getting. Make sure you know what you're getting into. Make sure you understand the vehicles that you're interfacing. If you can reach us through Hearst, a lot of Hearst rescue specialists are very, very engaged and educated on these components, so rely on those guys as well for guidance and resources. And call us anytime. We have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week hotline for first responders and tow professionals. It is free to all end users. You call anytime, any day. If you have a rescue specialist on the phone, we'll tell you how to safely interact with an EV and make sure you're safe. EnergySecurityAgency.com. The number is 855-ESA-SAFE. It'll help you guys be safe on the...
I'm going to put a little mark here because I'll probably add the phone number on screen there.
Stay safe. It'll help you guys be safe on the roads. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Hearst. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the time. And everybody be safe out there. Thank you so much, Dale.
We'll cut back to the wide just for a second.
Everybody be safe out there. Thank you so much, Dale. That was really, really valuable information. And we certainly want to encourage and can't stress enough the importance of education and ongoing education as it relates to electric vehicles. So thank you so much, Dalen.
And that's the end. So lop off this last part. We've got the intro, the outro. You can see this is the whole project now with all the cuts. And it is a good mix. I was afraid we were going to have to be wide on a lot of these slides the whole time, which can be very boring to watch. But the fact that we can come in on these tights, and Julia did a great job of following, was it Dalen? Following them around with the tight. So it made a lot of this footage a lot more impactful than it could have been, especially if he was leaning a lot more on the PowerPoint for some of those stuff. So I think I'm not going to do it right now because I don't know what branding they might want for it. I'm going to delete that to-do marker. But I may come in here and add the phone number on screen.
And make sure that you're safe. EnergySecurityAgency.com. The number is 855-ESA-SAFE. It'll help you.
Yeah, wherever they post this, they're also going to have that phone number as part of the post, so that's fine. And then the way that I share these, I'm going to go up here and share the H.264 to Frame.io. Come in here. It is the SAM system. I'm going to upload it there. And man, ever since Adobe bought Frame.io, I get logged out every other day, and I have to come in here and sign in with my email. I'm going to take this off screen for a second while I do this part. It's really frustrating. Authenticating pops up a window. Now I've got to log in with my Google ID to get into Frame.io. Okay. Now this is going to open Frame.io. That's going to authenticate. Okay. Now what okay, let me pop this back up and vent my last piece about Frame.io, Adobe's Frame.io. Now it's happening. You can see that the compression's taking place up here. It's 6% done. After it shares, then I'll get a notification that the export failed because it didn't have access to it, I think, when it started, if it's not going to work. And then I'll have to click show on that notification, which will take me to the temporary place where this file is stored before it uploads, and then I can upload it from there to Frame.io, which is annoying. I just wish Frame.io would stay logged in all the time like it used to. But this is the world we live in, and to edit this entire 20-minute video in 45 minutes of a live stream, that's not bad. And Final Cut Pro crashed one time. I'm not sure why. I'm editing this on a Samsung T7. Let me pull this down. This file is on this little hard drive, little Samsung. It's on one of these. Little T7. And they're fast, to my surprise. It's like 400 megabytes a second. As I'm editing on an M1 iMac, and I like this computer, and it's been great to me. And as it has stuttered a little bit, especially with multicam, when I'm pulling two 4K streams in multicam and editing the program feed, it's a lot of data that's coming through, and it does stutter, especially at double speed, which makes sense. Like, that's a lot of bits coming through. And I was starting to get frustrated at the M1 iMac. I was like, maybe I need a faster processor. Maybe I need the Studio with the M1 Ultra or whatever. And then I started thinking maybe some of this bottleneck is the transfer speed from the hard drive. And so I would love to, NAB they just released, G Technology just released this like SSD Studio, like 14 terabyte, 2,500 megabyte per second transfer Thunderbolt 3 drive. So just a workhorse. And I'd be interested to see how fast the edits go, like how much of this is coming down to the fact that it's got to keep coming over to this little hard drive or not. Because if I can speed that up by buying a different hard drive instead of a different computer, that's a better place for me financially and emotionally. What up, Christopher? Good to see you, man. So yeah, that's editing in Final Cut. We're at 30%. Oh, you can't see the pop-up. Interesting. But it's at 30%, so I'm not going to wait around and show you where it goes on Frame.io. But that's how I do this. So I'll run through quickly just so you can see the process again. But I take my files, and after I have the three of them selected, I right-click, I do new multicam clip, I name it sync, and then in this file you can see I've got the wide, the tight, and the audio, and then I drop that into a project. Excuse me. And then I can just cut back and forth between those angles, and they stay synced up the whole time. And the cool thing about doing it this way is, say, just as an example, and let me duplicate this just so I don't mess myself up. Duplicate project, and you can see now draft 2. But if I double click and come into my footage here, and I'm going to just so we can see something more extreme, I'm going to put an effect on this. We'll just make it black and white. So now you can see that in this wide, it's now black and white. And when I come back out to my draft, all of the wides are black and white. And again, this isn't something I would actually do. Can I just undo this from here? Yeah. But anything that you do inside this is going to be updated in everything outside. So that's why I like these multicam clips, because I can make all my edits for content, send it to my client, say, does this look good? And then I can go back through and color it and do all that work that if they discarded the project or whatever weren't gonna stick with it. I don't want to have done a whole bunch of work for nothing. And so the fact that I can go through, make this sequence edit, and then really quickly go through and edit the underlying clips at the source and not have to do a bunch of copy and paste or search and replace and all that sort of stuff. It's just a handy, wonderful, quick thing to do. So thanks for hanging out. If you were rewatching this, I appreciate you sticking through it. I hope you watched some of it in double time. Thanks for being a part of this channel. Excuse me, again, still on the mends from the old COVID. But thanks for being a part of the Tuesday night live stream. And if you've got any suggestions or thoughts, throw them in the comments. And that's it. Have a great day, night, whatever, wherever. See you later. Bye.